the Women Changing the World podcast, a podcast on a mission to bring you some of the most amazing women I know who are doing incredible things to generally make the world a better place. From corporate sustainability to straight up magic and everything in between, you'll meet the real life humans who are birthing the new. I'm your host, Liz Best, and I'm here to amplify the stories and voices of women who are changing the world. In our last solo episode, I wanted to sit down to record one more episode to wrap up our informal season and reflect on all the magic and wisdom that has been shared on our interviews so far in 2023. I just feel like there was so much wisdom and knowledge that our guests so generously shared with me and with our community. And as it's all been sort of like percolating for me, I just thought it might be helpful to capture some of my key takeaways. And as always, I love hearing from you. So if there were different takeaways or things that have really stuck with you this season, I would love to hear about them. Please don't hesitate to reach out. We'll share info on the best places to get in touch with me at the end of the episode. And again, I would love to hear what you've taken with you from this season. So we'll take it from the top. So episode 51, I sat down with Tatiana Figueiredo, who is the founder of the Business of Community. I have learned a ton from her this year, and we talked about what a community business is, how it's a completely different business model than what a lot of us think about when we think about traditional business models. I actually really love her definitions of both community and community business, so I will share them here. So her definition of a community is a group of people interested in nurturing their own and one another's growth, which is inspired by Bell Hooks. And a community business is an organization that makes money from facilitating interactions that nurture both individual and collective growth. Tatiana and I talked about the importance of boundaries as a community leader and how it's just as important to know when to lean in and engage in a community as it is to know when not to lean in or engage. I really loved her practice that she shared of going on a field trip once a week to do something fun during work hours. I have not implemented this yet myself, but I do plan to come up with my own version of it for summer and fall. As you may know, community was a big theme on the podcast really throughout the podcast this season. And so having this conversation with Tatiana was so fun to really set the stage for community in its many different forms throughout the rest of our conversations. Episode 52, I sat down with Amanda Lucchetti, who is co-founder of Diani, and it was so much fun for a whole lot of reasons. I think one of my favorites is that we talked about one of my favorite topics, which is Amanda's experience of breaking up with hustle culture and how she's been redefining what full-time work means to her. If you're someone who's been exploring your own relationship with things like ambition, success, and hard work, I can't recommend this conversation highly enough. Amanda is so inspiring in how she's thinking about these topics, and just really appreciated her insight on what hard work really means for her in this chapter. Shortly thereafter, I got to sit down with Tiffany Yu for episode 53. She is the founder and CEO of Diversability, and it was really such a privilege to have her share her story and her experience with us. Tiffany is a prolific thought leader. She's a 3 times TEDx speaker. She has over 170,000 followers across platforms. And what I was perhaps most struck by in our conversation, we touched on a lot. She's amazing, was Tiffany's own reflections on burnout and how even in the darkest times, she knew that it was not the end of her story. I was also really inspired by her sharing with us her vision of getting involved in the Olympics in LA coming up in the future. I'm all about manifesting on the podcast. And so if you are listening to this and you are in any sort of position to help make that happen, I'm just so excited to watch it come to life. We had our very first interview with two amazing women changing the world at the same time. Again, first time that I've sat down with two people at once. I got to sit down with Laura Hunter and Hannah Ping, who are co-founders of the Now Work. And we talked about a lot of, again, like really fun and juicy topics for change agents, one of which was why burnout is so endemic to the impact space, as well as what we can do to stop it. And we did talk about another of my favorite topics, setting and communicating boundaries at work. Perhaps my favorite thing that we touched on, though, was their encouragement that we should see and position ourselves as independent experts, which is something that the Now Work is now helping hundreds of sustainability professionals do today through their platform. In episode 55, I got to sit down with Pia Beck, who is founder of Curate Wellco and Considered Coffee in Santa Barbara. I've gotten to partner with Pia and her team on a number of different things in my business over the past year, which has been so much fun. We sat down to talk about what it means to take a full stack approach to business. And I really loved hearing about how she's translated her experiences on the Curate side to a brick and mortar business, including and especially how she embraced a pivot on the Considered side when her initial plan was stalling out. Episode 56 with Jenny Blake, who is an award-winning podcaster and author of several books, including Free Time. We touched on so many topics that are close to my heart, including how to stop being Chief Everything Officer and how to build a delightfully tiny team, which is Jenny's phrase for how she has approached team building in her business. I think my most favorite thing that we touched on, was finding the most meaningful business metrics to keep us inspired, the ones that actually bring us joy instead of focusing on the quote unquote standard measures of business success. One example of this is that I am so motivated and inspired by the 6 people for whom this podcast, the Women Changing the World podcast, was your favorite podcast on Spotify in 2022. Whoever you are, I love you. It can be so tempting to focus on downloads and open rates and a million other things that can sometimes be demoralizing when you see the scale at which some organizations are measuring them. And one of my favorite things that Jenny and I discussed is like meaningful metrics for the win. In episode 57, Claudia Guerrero and I discussed conscious marketing. I love the approach Claudia has taken to marketing, including the many cool and inspiring ways that she's been building community on LinkedIn. If you want to know more about an approach to marketing that is not icky and is instead aligned with your values and desired impact, I highly recommend giving this one a listen. Claudia is also such an inspiring advocate for remote work and building a life and business on your own terms. Episode 58 was a juicy conversation with Diana Rosenberg. Diana was one of the founding members of the now International Women in CSR group, and she works in apparel sustainability by day. Perhaps my biggest takeaway from our conversation was the importance of checking on our people. If your colleague seems off in a meeting or your friend is MIA, check in. We also talked about creating the communities that we wish existed and spending time in nature to remind us why we do sustainability and ESG work. Erin Halper, founder and CEO of The Upside, joined me for episode 59. We covered so much stuff. My biggest takeaway from our conversation was probably the importance of focus and how it can be a game changer for your business. That was Erin's word for 2022. And her, just like what she shared about how she approached it, how she executed it, and the results really, really, really inspired me. focus is a really big focus for me this year. I don't know if that's like a pun. It feels kind of meta. But this conversation with Erin just really helped me appreciate again what's possible when you meaningfully actually prioritize your priorities. And she and the Upside are living proof of this. Episode 60 features Jordana Vasquez, who is a senior manager for climate resilience and equity at the Resilient Cities Network and the co-founder of Women of Color Collective in Sustainability, WOCSUS. Her perspective on how to meaningfully incorporate community voice in climate resilience work is something that will stay with me for a very long time. I'm perhaps most struck, though, by her younger self advice to, quote, throw away the notebook and maybe to plan a little less to let things unfold. Nivi Achanta joined me for episode 61. She is the founder and CEO of Soapbox Project, and we talked about everything from joyful activism to self-care for community leaders. One of my favorite takeaways from our conversation was the idea of self-efficacy, or building up our belief in ourselves through small wins. They really do build so much momentum, and it's so cool to see the way that Nivi's applying this, both within Soapbox Project and her life more broadly. Our conversation was just like so much fun. Which is not surprising if you know Nivi. She's so much fun. And there's a lot of like just really juicy stuff in there about optimism and activism and how we can make an impact. Last but definitely not least, Charlie Reed joined me for a conversation about community-centric climate programs, which is part of her work at Intuit, her journey, and her career advice for people looking to get into the sustainability space. Charlie's relationship-based approach to building her network is something I have long been impressed by. And I loved her advice to go into informational conversations knowing how people can help you. It makes it so much easier to receive support, and it also makes it a lot easier for people to support you. So that is a recap of some of my biggest takeaways from our conversations on the podcast over the past few months. I am really in awe, as always, by the people that I get to talk to on this podcast. This community is amazing. We will be taking a break for the summer so that we can record all of our episodes for this fall. And we'll be back wherever you listen to podcasts in September. So I hope you have an amazing summer break. Check out the archive. We've got so many awesome conversations with awesome change agents. And I'm super excited to be back in your ears and your inbox again come the fall. Thank you so much for listening. Is network on your 2023 to-do list? Hi there, it's Liz. If you're liking our conversation and our approach to personal development, career advancement, and living a life that turns you on, I invite you to join our community, the Girls Club Collective. We are the intentionally intimate personal and professional development community for women who are changing the world. Instead of asking for a seat at the table, we decided to build our own. Like most change agents and rebels with a cause, you don't often have enough hours in the day to change the world and cultivate a strategic network. If overwhelm has become your second language and you're feeling tired of trying to convince your own marketing team to actually read your ESG report, you're in the right place. We know that sometimes trying to make a difference can feel like being that one person out on the dance floor trying to get the party started. And that's why we created the Girls Club Collective. It's where women changing the world organize, and all you have to do is show up as yourself. We are the anti-establishment version of the Boys Club, reimagining ambition and leading the movement of meaningful work fueled by moxie, strategy, and a little bit of magic. That means you not only gain access to a community of people you need to know, you'll also take a look at how you can grow as a leader, what you really want, and why your dream of living by the beach and working for yourself isn't as crazy as it sometimes feels. By offering monthly peer advisory, salons on timely and relevant topics, networking power hours, and more, the Girls Club Collective is your extended team, your extra brains, and an energizing environment that is geared toward your personal and professional growth. We believe that changing the world is a team sport. Join the collective designed for exactly that and use the code PODCAST, that's all caps podcast, for 10% off your first year of membership. You can find the link to join us in the show notes, and I cannot wait to see you in the collective. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Women Changing the World podcast. Please rate and review the Women Changing the World podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts, and don't forget to subscribe for future episodes. You can find me on Instagram. My handle is liz.best, that's lis.best, or you can find me on LinkedIn by searching my name, Liz Best. Join my mail list by visiting elizabethbest.com/monthly-meditation, and you'll receive all the latest updates on events, retreats, and opportunities to work with me, plus a monthly love note from my heart to your inbox. I am so excited to keep in touch, and I'll see you in the next episode.